This video is sponsored by Squarespace. What's going on, guys? Billy here, and if you look at both of these drones side by side, the DJI Mini 3 Pro and the Mini 4 Pro, you'd think that they're the same drone, but there's a lot more differences than you'd expect. Now, even though this drone is a pretty significant upgrade, especially under the hood, I'm not so sure if Mini 3 Pro owners should be running out to replace the drone that they already have. Now, if you instead have a Mavic Mini or the Mini 2, this would be a great upgrade to keep you in that micro drone category. So what I want to do in this video is go over all the differences between the Mini 3 Pro and the Mini 4 Pro to figure out if it's worth the upgrade for you. So this here is a full list of the upgrades that were introduced with the Mini 4 Pro, and just for comparison's sake, I also want to include the upgrades that were made from the Mini 2 to the Mini 3 Pro. The previous upgrade was massive as it added so many core functions to the drone, like optical avoidance, a far better camera, a gimbal that could rotate the camera to shoot in a vertical aspect ratio, 0.3, a remote with a built-in screen, and plenty of other improvements. The Mini 4 Pro, however, is more of a refinement to the previous generation of drone because, let's be real, the Mini 3 Pro was already so strong in so many different areas. This means that the massive updates really came by way of software. The big hardware change was the addition of the improved optical avoidance system, but these sensors in turn now gives us the ability to access features that were once only found on DJI's larger, higher end drones. Those will make more sense as we dive deeper into the changes one by one. Now, there are a few other minor hardware changes that the Mini 4 Pro introduced, like the addition of these front legs that stabilize the drone better when sitting on the ground. These were actually first introduced on the standard version of the Mini 3, but the Mini 3 Pro instead sat on these smaller nubs on the underside of the drone, which I think design-wise looked really cool, but it was also kind of wobbly when sitting on the ground. These legs are also where some of the new antennas are located as well, but we'll get more into that soon when we talk about the transmission system. The vents towards the backside of the drone are also a bit bigger on the Mini 4 Pro for what I would believe is improved airflow, as this drone does not have an internal fan for cooling. Therefore, it relies on air flowing through the drone as it flies to cool the internals. Now, this one is a bit of a stinger. Even though the Mini 4 Pro and Mini 3 Pro have the same exact camera, your ND filters that you purchased for the Mini 3 Pro will not work on the Mini 4 Pro. The little teeth that lock the filters into place is different, making your old ND filters useless with this drone. I know some people have sunk a lot of money into filters, but I wouldn't make this a deal breaker if you're looking to upgrade. You really only need a couple of ND filters to get by, and you can get a good set on Amazon for pretty cheap. Now, finally, DJI has also somehow managed to fit a little auxiliary LED here on the underside of the drone, which is pretty insane considering the weight limitation. This will help with spotting the drone when flying at nighttime, and it helps the drone see the ground in these low light scenarios for a nice soft landing. I also love using these little LED lights for some creative lighting when I'm out taking photos, as it's like a portable key light. So the body style between both of these drones is very similar, and I think that that's what makes this more of an iterative upgrade and not like this massive generational upgrade. Like, when you look at the difference between the Mini 2 and the Mini 3 Pro, that was such a big difference spec and also design-wise that it really warranted an upgrade no matter who you were, because it was such a jump. Whereas with this drone, they've really only made small improvements in areas that I think are really important, like the optical avoidance sensors as well as the auxiliary LED. But for me, I still love the design of this drone. Now let's move over to the camera. This is kind of like the second portion of our video, and this is where we begin to see these software improvements made by DJI here in the Mini 4 Pro. So spec-wise, DJI was able to squeeze out some more capabilities from this camera, but personally, I think that these improvements really aren't all that special. Like, with an identical sensor size, megapixel count, maximum resolution, and bitrate, the upgrades that were made really don't make this camera fundamentally better. However, what I do think makes the Mini 4 Pro's camera much better than the Mini 3 Pro's camera is the improved dynamic range, which is something you won't find on the spec sheet. For me, the dynamic range was one of the most annoying things about the Mini 3 Pro. I always felt like if I was exposing for my shadows, then the highlights were way too blown out, and vice versa. Exposing for my highlights would leave the image feeling really dark. This was a problem, especially with the time of year that we're in right now as we head into the winter, where the sun angle is really low, causing some very harsh shadows from buildings and trees. I went out recently to try and collect some sample photos and videos to give you a side-by-side look, but with the overcast conditions, you really can't see the dynamic range difference that I was mentioning earlier. The image quality is also similar between both sets of photos and videos, but remember, the camera really isn't the big change with this drone. All of the specs that really matter are unchanged, which leads to a similar shooting experience. The last examples that I'll leave you with here are some random shots from different places that I've brought both of these drones to. When you put the spec sheet away and don't directly compare these cameras side by side, you would probably be hard pressed to tell which is which if I didn't have these labels on the screen. The shooting experience between these cameras is similar with the rotating camera to shoot vertical video and portrait photos, and I have to tell you, these images from both drones look awesome. I've used both the Mini 3 Pro and Mini 4 Pro not only for personal work shared here on my social media pages, but for client work as well, taking photos and videos of construction sites and homes that are for sale. These little cameras punch way above their weight class, delivering results that look like they were taken with a much higher end drone than a little micro drone with a small camera. Okay, so I feel like we've discussed the camera way too much for there being such a little difference between the Mini 3 Pro and the Mini 4 Pro, but these are camera drones after all, and the camera is such an important part about these drones because you use them to take photos and videos. Just know that if you will be upgrading from the Mini 3 Pro to the Mini 4 Pro, there's not all that much of a difference, so I wouldn't make this the main reason to upgrade. Now, before we get into the main reasons why you should upgrade, like the different software features and the new transmission system, here's a quick word from this video sponsor, Squarespace. Just recently, I completely overhauled my Squarespace site with a brand new template to give it a clean feel. It was difficult to find a template because of all the great options that Squarespace offers, but I eventually found one that allowed me to share my images and information the way that I wanted. Redoing my website was seamless as the new Fluid engine made it easy to fully customize every aspect to my liking. I've been looking for the best place to share my content online, and doing it on my own terms with Squarespace allows me to completely customize the experience. My website is like a central hub for all of my photos and videos, and I'm the one that gets to control how it looks and functions. To keep on top of how my website is performing, Squarespace's analytics go in depth so that I can see how much traffic my website is getting, what area of my website is being viewed the most, and I can see which web pages and which content is performing the best. So a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video and helping me display my work online for over half a decade. Now, one of the big reasons that could warrant an upgrade is the transmission system that gives the Mini 4 Pro a big edge over the Mini 3 Pro. The new 04 transmission system gives you more range, but more importantly, it improves the signal at close distances with the 4 onboard antennas on the drone. This is a big increase over the Mini 3's dual antennas. You know, I can never understand how DJI continues to improve their transmission system from drone release to drone release. It just keeps getting better, and this go around moving from 03 in the older drones like the Mini 3 Pro to now 04 in their next generation drones, it really does make a big difference in your overall flight experience. Really, the big change comes from the new antennas on this drone. So now we have 4 total antennas on the drone and 6 total antennas on the remote controllers that we're using in the RC-N2 and in the RC2. And really, if you're in a vacuum, you wouldn't notice a big difference. Like 03 on the Mini 3 Pro is still great, but when I fly these drones side by side, like when I fly them back to back, trying to take example photos and videos, you can tell a big difference. Like when I'm flying, say, 1,200 feet away, I do get a little bit of breakup when using 03, whereas with 04 on the Mini 4 Pro, it was flawless. I mention this in almost any video that I make. Transmission system is so important because it really does attribute to the overall flight experience of your drone. Like if I'm trying to fly my drone 2,000 feet away and it continues to break up and gives me a bad signal, it's going to be an overall bad flight experience. So anytime there's an upgrade in transmission system, I always think that's actually worth the upgrade because you do get an overall better flight experience. Now moving on here, like with any new drone, the Mini 4 Pro is filled with new features, some of which stem from the new omnidirectional obstacle avoidance system. These new features alone make this a more powerful and capable drone than the Mini 3 Pro, like the AR tools, an upgraded active track system, waypoints, and cruise control. The AR tools, in my opinion, are very helpful. Being able to see the home point right on your live feed and the drone's route when returning to home help improve situational awareness without being annoying or distracting. This is a feature that definitely could have been added by way of a firmware update to DJI's older drones like the Mini 3 Pro, but I think that this is a feature that they want to keep exclusive to their newer drones to give you a reason to upgrade to one of their newer platforms. Having the upgraded camera hardware around the drone that can see in every direction allows us to now take advantage of improved autonomous flight modes, namely the improved active track system, waypoints, and cruise control. You could argue that the Mini 3 Pro could handle these features with the obstacle avoidance system that it already has, considering it still is fairly good, but it's apparent when you look at DJI's entire drone lineup that they want to keep these highly autonomous features dedicated to drones that have the omnidirectional obstacle avoidance system. So the Mavic 3, the Air 3, and of course the Mini 4 Pro here are the ones to take advantage of these highly autonomous flight modes. In my time using active track on different drones, I have to say that I was very impressed with how well the Mini 3 Pro could avoid obstacles. Just with the forwards and backwards sensors, I was really confident that the drone would be able to follow me without crashing and make its own decisions while flying. The new touch trace interface on the Mini 4 Pro, however, is a total game changer, bringing one of the biggest changes to the active track feature in quite some time. Like, not only can I tell the drone which way I want it to follow me from, but mid-flight I can have it dynamically change positions and distances from me. This is something that not even the higher-end Air 3 or Mavic 3 can do. Waypoints, on the other hand, is a feature that DJI's entire lineup of drones is now capable of, and this feature had been missing on their drones for quite some time. This is a great way to repeat pre-planned missions and nail complex shots with the push of a button. I personally use Waypoints the most when I'm working with a construction company to take photos and videos in the same spot every time I visit their site. When the Mavic 3 received this feature through a firmware update, people were wondering if it would make its way to other drones as well, but we now know why it was exclusive to that series of drone, because of the upgraded obstacle avoidance system. It really does make sense why DJI would limit this feature to drones with the upgraded obstacle avoidance system, because if you say had the Mini 3 Pro flying Waypoints and you were moving side to side, it could be moving in the direction of a blind spot and potentially crash. The same is true with cruise control. I like this feature a lot when I'm trying to get from point A to point B, because I don't have to jam down on the stick as I try to fly my drone potentially thousands of feet away. But let's say I had it flying sideways. The drone would basically be flying blind and could potentially crash when moving in the direction of these blind spots. So on the surface level, you might not see the same big changes made from the Mini 3 Pro to the Mini 4 Pro as we saw from the Mini 2 to the Mini 3 Pro, but under the hood, there are a lot more differences than you'd expect. Like, all of those features we just covered really do make this drone so much more powerful, and all the upgrades that were made really do improve this drone in the right areas. Like, I think personally, the airframe and the camera are already so good on this drone that it's like, what more could they do to improve the Mini 3 Pro to the Mini 4 Pro? We already can take 48 megapixel photos, 4K video at 60 frames per second, and now that we have improved dynamic range, this really is such a great drone all around. It really has become more powerful, and it makes me wonder, like, what will be in a Mini 5 Pro? Like, what more can they do to this drone to make it even better? It's so hard to think what could be improved, but I'm sure they'll find a way in a year from now to give us something that is even better. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the Mini 4 Pro versus the Mini 3 Pro down in the comment section below, and as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.